Good morning on this Wednesday, August 29th, and as we look back with the 7-year anniversary of Katrina, it's pretty ironic that we're also dealing with the hurricane landfall of Isaac as it begins to move into the coastal parishes of Plaquemines, Terrebonne, and Lafourche. It is quite common for the center of hurricanes to deviate in multiple directions as they start to interact with the coastline, and that is exactly what we are dealing with this morning with Isaac, as it has been wobbling back and forth between a north-northwest and even sometimes apparent west-southwest motion. But overall, the storm should continue to move more toward the west-northwest or northwest over the next 24 hours, but the forward motion should continue to be relatively slow. It's currently moving west-northwest at 7 miles per hour, so in addition to the storm surge threat, which is rather high right now, there will also be the risk of inland flooding. However, the main risk at this current hour is the risk of deadly storm surge, especially along St. Bernard, Plaquemines, and Lower Lafourche parishes. In fact, the latest news over the past couple of hours is that some of the levees down near Plaquemines are close to being overtopped. Luckily, there is a chance that these levees will still be able to hold the waters back, but that is certainly a concern for officials down there at this time. And as you can see, the risk of a storm surge greater than or equal to 6 feet is still about 60 to 70% or even higher as you go from Gulfport westward to Bay St. Louis. And although the storm surge has not made its way across Highway 90 across much of the Mississippi Gulf Coast just yet, I do think that there will be a greater chance of this occurring as we inch closer toward daybreak. Portions of the Mississippi coast have already dealt with the storm surge. For example, areas near Waveland have had to deal with very high water levels already, but farther to the east near Gulfport we haven't quite seen the surge make its way past Highway 90, and that is a result of the east-northeasterly winds that have prevailed over the past 24 hours. With the center displaced well to the southwest, this makes sense. However, as the storm begins to move more toward the north, we should start to see more in the way of southeasterly winds, and even at this current hour it looks as though the latest observation at Biloxi is starting to veer more so out of the east-southeast. And so this should allow for some of the storm surge to be able to come in a little easier over the next few hours, along with high tide, which is going to happen later on this morning. So it looks as though the official storm surge forecasts from the National Hurricane Center are looking fairly accurate at this time. And here's the second risk that I talked about, the risk of inland flooding. As you can see, the next 5-day precipitation forecast from HPC is highlighting much of the central Gulf Coast from Mobile and Pensacola westward into Baton Rouge and Lake Charles with 10 to 15 inches of precipitation, and the threat will not be limited to the south central Gulf Coast. As you can see, the remnants are now forecast to move over much of Arkansas, and the risk of flooding will continue there as the remnants push northward. Furthermore, a tornado watch is currently in effect for much of southeast Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and southern Alabama, and the risk of isolated short-lived tornadoes is likely to continue into the next 2 days. But just to recap, the main concern over the next 12 hours will be the storm surge not only along the eastern and southern parishes of southeast Louisiana, but also extending well to the north and east of the center across Mississippi, Alabama, and even possibly as far east as Pensacola. Already over 300,000 people are without power across the state of Louisiana, and I think those numbers will drastically rise within the next day as those hurricane-force wind gusts do impact the metropolitan area of New Orleans, and we're also going to have the risk of flooding even with these outer bands, and those are also the locations of where the isolated short-lived tornado threat will exist. So thank you for watching, and be safe out there if you are a resident or if you just happen to be located across the central Gulf Coast. Steve Parker from the Hurricane app and I will continue to have more blog updates and live video updates from the Mississippi Gulf Coast as Isaac continues to move into Louisiana and Mississippi.